Hey guys, what's up? Silent here. Yes, I know, I have a voice, shut up. Many of you have been requesting me to make a Maehwa Awakening guide, and I finally found the time to make one. So yeah, here it is. This guide will mainly be for beginners and for the people who are interested in the class. I will mainly be focusing on Maehwa Awakening though, since there are already some amazing guides for Succession out there. But I will still be giving some tips to help you choose between Awakening and Succession, which skills to go for, and things like that. Note that I will be going in extensive detail though, so you can expect this to be a long video. All of the things that I will be saying comes either from my personal experience or from other sources. So yeah, let's begin. This guide will be split into different parts, each focusing on different things about the class, and we will be going through all of them. This includes an introduction to Maehwa, pre-awakening, awakening or succession, introduction to awakening, CC mechanics, awakening skills, BSR and Rabam skills, core skills, add-ons, PvP, and PvE. Let me start off by saying that Maehwa is not a bruiser class, nor is it a class that excels in team fights. We do not have long-range nukes like casters and rangers. We do not have invisibility like Kuno and Ninja. We do not have spammable iframes like Sork and Dark Knight. And we aren't as tanky like Striker and Mystic. What Maehwa does have is a lot of mobility and a lot of damage. This makes us great in small-scale PvP, 1v1s, picks, and stuff like that. We get in, kill people as fast as possible, then get out. Since we have a lot of mobility, Maehwa is also really good at kiting, where we force people to chase after us, then finish them off once they get isolated. When you first start off as a Maehwa, your first goal should be reaching level 56. You can do this either through questing, or you can have someone boost you. Personally, I just recommend you to do the story quest and take your time. This allows you to familiarize yourself with the class and learn each skill one by one. It might be boring at first, but trust me, doing it like this allows you to slowly learn what you have to learn. This phase of the game is called your pre-awakening or non-awakening, and your current set of skills are called that as well. Once you reach level 56, you will be given an option to unlock either Awakening or Succession, both of which are very different from each other. Awakening gives you access to your carry spear and a new set of skills, while Succession focuses on your pre-awakening skills and gives them an upgrade that makes them much better. So, which one should you go for? Well, the short answer is, whichever one you are more interested in. In my opinion, Succession is a lot easier to start off with. You will be using the skills that you have already been familiar with, and it's very easy to grind with, especially on low-end spots such as Folly's Forest. You will still have to learn some additional mechanics though, such as your red blade, decapitation cancels, and stuff like that, but those can be learned over time. By going Succession, you will also have an easier time in early game PvP, as Succession has higher base accuracy, which is a little more forgiving in early game, where you don't have your gear built just yet. Awakening on the other hand has a more advanced playstyle than Succession. Unlike Succession, where you only have one weapon at a time, Awakening incorporates the use of the blade and carry spear simultaneously. Awakening is generally considered to be the better 1v1 class of the two in most matchups, and both are very close when it comes to PvE clearing speed, with Succession being faster by a small margin. If you're interested in Awakening and you're willing to go to the extra mile to learn the extra skills, then by all means go for it. It's still solid in PvE with the recent updates, and still does a lot of damage. Not to mention, it's beautiful as hell. Once you have the time, I still recommend you try out both of them, and decide based on which playstyle you prefer more, and which feels better to you. Awakening generally offers a lot more utility than Succession, but loses some raw burst damage. Awakening has much more catches, protected engages, buffs, and a permanent block. You also have access to your core skills, which as of the making of this video, is an Awakening only feature. The core skill feature allows you to add certain effects to a skill of your choosing. You can either add a CC to a skill, or add protection to an unprotected skill. Before we discuss each Awakening skill one by one, I want to briefly go over crowd control and how it works in the game. Basically, some skills have the ability to put other players into a state that affects their gameplay. This can either affect their attacks or their movement. These statuses are called crowd control, or CC for short. The CCs that are available to Maehwa are Stun, Stiffness, Knockback, Knockdown, Bound, Float, Down Smash, Air Smash, and Slows. As you can see, Maehwa does not have a grab, nor a freeze. This guide by AlexT96 from MMOsumo.com explains what each crowd control does, as well as a diagram that shows the order in which they can be applied. Link in the description. Another thing about CCs is that you cannot apply them indefinitely, as they have a limit. Basically, for every enemy that you are fighting, there is a hidden counter that ramps up with every CC that you apply. Stiffness applies a 0.7 value, while every other CC applies 1. If this value becomes equal or greater than 2, then the enemy becomes immune to CC for 5 seconds. Let me give you an example while showing the CC counter in real time. Here, I managed to land a stiff to the enemy, which brings the counter to a value of 0.7. Even though they can't move, a stiffness only lasts for about 1 second, which won't be enough for me to combo. So I immediately apply a float using Red Moon afterwards. This now brings the CC counter to a value of 1.7. Now a float lasts for around 3 seconds, which is now enough time for me to perform a quick combo. I go back to Awakening using Sleet Step, then cast Sticky Snowflake into Flow Frost Flower. Now since the CC counter is only at 1.7, I still have room for one more CC. In this case, I casted Moonrise, which floats the enemy and brings the counter to 2.7. Now that the counter has exceeded the value of 2, I can no longer apply a CC to this guy, which means the only option I have left is to deal as much damage as I can before the float ends. I cast Frost Pillars into Tip of the Iceberg, which finishes him off. If in case your enemy doesn't die and gets up, their CC counter will be reset back to 0. This reset will always happen no matter what value the CC counter was left at. So how do you avoid CCs besides not getting hit? Well, you need to use protection. Certain skills put you in a state of protection that allows you to either avoid CCs, avoid damage, or avoid both. These states are Super Armor, Frontal Guard, and iframe. The first state is Super Armor. While in this state, you become immune to all CCs except for slows and grabs. You still take full damage while in Super Armor though, however this differs from class to class. Super Armor is indicated by a yellow icon besides your name. The second state is Frontal Guard. While in Frontal Guard, you cannot be damaged nor CC'd from hits that you take from the front. However, you can still be grabbed. Your Frontal Guard has a gauge though that can run out, which is indicated by a small shield icon along with a number that represents the percentage of how much block you've got left. The higher your DP, the more damage your block can absorb. Some classes though have blocks that aren't limited to the front and can block damage in an increased radius. Frontal Guard is indicated by a blue shield icon besides your name. The last state is iframe or invincibility frame, and is considered to be the strongest state of protection in the game. While in this state, you become immune to everything, be it damage, CCs, and even grabs. Skills with iframes usually only give you a small window, so ping and other inconsistencies affect this state the most. Iframe is indicated by a red icon besides your name. Skills that contain either one of these 3 states are called protected skills, and Maehwa Awakening has quite a decent amount of them. Besides protected skills, there is also resistance. Resistance gives you a certain chance to negate certain CCs. By default, you will have a 20% chance to resist every CC except slows. This chance can be increased through gear, crystals, passive skills, and other sources. Once you unlock your Awakening, you will have an extra 22 skills on top of your pre-Awakening skills. This includes 18 actives, a new auto attack chain, your C-swap, your core skill, and an Elvia Realm exclusive skill. While you don't have to memorize what each skill is and what each skill does, I still highly recommend that you try to do so. It'll help you in the long run when the time comes that you will be making your own combos and things like that. I'll be going over every Awakening skill available, as well as any additional interactions they may have with one another. Your C-swap is triggered by pressing the C button. This allows you to change stance either from pre-awakening to awakening or awakening to pre-awakening. This skill has different variations depending on the directional key input. This skill has frontal guard, which can linger. Make sure to input a direction when C-swapping though, as Maehwa's stationary C-swap animation is really long. C-swapping to your left from awakening provides the longest lingering frontal guard out of the other options. Swapping between stances has a cooldown of 2 seconds, but this can be bypassed by using certain skills that allow you to interchange even if your C-swap is on cooldown. This skill is your new auto attack chain in Awakening and is triggered by pressing the left mouse button. This skill also has a variation when you hold down W while casting it. The first hit of this variation triggers a float. I personally use this a lot as a follow-up CC in the middle of my combos. This float doesn't have a cooldown but still follows the CC limit. Full Moon Wall is your awakening block. It can be triggered by pressing Q in Awakening and provides frontal guard. This skill puts you in frontal guard indefinitely unless cancelled out of or if your frontal guard gets depleted. Reverse Scale is casted by pressing LMB while in Full Moon Wall. This ability can stun enemies, has forward guard, and gives you 10% attack speed buff for 10 seconds upon casting.
This skill does not follow where your character is looking at and will follow the camera instead.
This skill is mainly used for the attack speed buff as you do not need to hit anything for this buff to apply. Not to mention, you earn forward guard while doing so. Note that this skill does consume stamina though, so keep that in mind. This skill has a 6-second cooldown. This skill is one of Maehwa's main damage skills. This skill can be followed by most awakening skills, which makes it a very good skill to open up a combo with. This skill has a lot of debuffs on enemies, including a 20% movement speed slow, a 20% attack speed slow, a -3% evasion debuff, and a bleed. This skill has a cooldown of 15 seconds but can be spammed. It deals less damage and doesn't apply the debuffs when used during cooldown. This skill is also one of your main sources of damage. This skill can be casted by pressing and holding S and F, where your character does a single hit that has super armor, then performs a backflip that has a float. This skill also recovers a decent amount of WP. You can skip the first hit of this skill by casting it after Sticky Snowflake, Petal Drill, or Flow Frost Flower. This allows for a much smoother combo, but will also skip the super armor of the skill. This skill has a cooldown of 9 seconds but can be spammed. It deals less damage and doesn't recover WP when used during cooldown. This skill is one of Maehwa's protected skills. It can be casted by pressing Shift and F and is mostly commonly preceded by Moonrise. This skill has a frontal guard and is mostly used for protected damage. This skill has a cooldown of 7 seconds but can be spammed. It deals less damage and loses its frontal guard when used during cooldown. Petal Drill is a very useful Maehwa skill. It is protected and deals decent amount of damage. It can be casted by pressing Shift LMB and propels you forward by quite a distance. The momentum is maintained when you cast this skill after dashing forward. This skill has super armor and applies a -10 DP debuff and a -30% movement speed debuff to enemies. This DP debuff stacks with skill add-ons but doesn't stack with other skills. The dash also doesn't consume stamina and is best used when redirected with mouse movement. This is my personal favorite Maehwa skill, mainly due to the sheer amount of things you can use it for, as it can be used for applying debuffs, protected damage, movement, or for CC when you unlock its core skill. This skill has a 7-second cooldown. Petal Bloom is one of Maehwa's hardest hitting skills. It can be triggered by pressing Shift R and B and can be held down to deal even more damage. The max damage is applied after holding for about 2 seconds, but you can continue to hold the skill afterwards up to about 5 seconds. The casting of the skill, as well as the charging animation, are all in Super Armor. Note that charging the skill past the initial 2 seconds will temporarily stop your stamina regen and will continue once you let go of the skill. The skill has a high chance to down smash enemies and has a cooldown of 12 seconds. Stigma is one of Maehwa Awakening's best catches, and also a good source for WP sustain. It can be triggered by pressing F while in Awakening, and you will dash backward while thrusting in front of. This dash goes through units, so it is best used alongside back chase to get behind people. The dash itself also doesn't consume stamina, so it can be a great source of movement. The skill also has super armor while you are dashing backwards, and the hit can apply stiffness. Keep in mind though that the hit itself is unprotected, so be careful. This skill has a low cooldown of 4 seconds, so use it when you can. New Year's Eve or NYE is arguably Maehwa's strongest PvE skill at the moment. This skill can be triggered by pressing space after performing a thrust or stab attack. These attacks include the second hit of an auto attack, the first hit of Moonrise, after Moonrise Cancel, after Petal Drill, after Flow December, after Petal Bloom, after Moonlight Dash, after Frost Pillars, after Stigma, after Tenacious Edge, after Cloud Stab, after Reverse Kill, and after the first and second hit of Frost Flower. The skill is mainly used as a damage source in PvE and is rarely used in PvP. The skill itself also has a stiff. The skill's cooldown is 5 seconds but is pretty much neglected as it deals the same amount of damage even when on cooldown, so spamming it is very viable. You do lose the stiffness though when used during cooldown. Tenacious Edge is one of Maehwa's spammable skills and is triggered by pressing SL and B. The skill has a stiffness and recovers HP and WP per hit. The skill itself is rarely used as it is unprotected and the animation is pretty long. However, Tenacious Edge allows you to spam New Year's Eve at a pretty fast rate, which has amazing DPS in PvE. The skill has a 3-second cooldown but can be spammed. It deals less damage, loses its stiffness, and doesn't recover HP and WP when used during cooldown. General Apricot, also known as your E-buff, gives you 30% crit rate, 20% attack speed, and 15% accuracy for 30 seconds upon usage. This skill should be utilized whenever it is off cooldown, and it's best used by alternating between this and your Black Spirit Rage buff. This skill also has super armor and has a cooldown of 180 seconds or 3 minutes. Sleet Steps is a movement skill that is triggered by holding down shift and inputting either left, right, or down directional buttons, and can also be used by double tapping these buttons. The skill has super armor, recovers WP, and gives you a 10% critical hit rate buff for 10 seconds upon use. The skill can be used to go into Awakening while in pre-Awakening, but shares the same cooldown as your C-swap. This skill can also be used in conjunction with Petal Bloom to reposition yourself anytime during the charge. The skill can also be used to cancel the animation of Red Moon and is highly recommended if you're only using Red Moon to float the enemy. The skill can also be used to replace Stigma's dash, allowing you to cast it to the left or to the right instead of just backwards. The skill has a cooldown of 7 seconds but can be spammed. It loses its WP regen when used during cooldown, and more importantly, it also loses its super armor, so be careful not to overly rely on this skill too much. You can also use this skill through the evasion keybind found on the settings. Reaching level 57 unlocks 2 new skills which you can learn. The first one is Oppression. Oppression is a very solid skill. It has a stiffness within a wide area and also applies a minus 20 DP debuff to enemies. The skill can only be used through the quick slot. The skill's almost instant cast time can be used to land an unexpected catch on someone. This skill is also used a lot in PvE for the amazing minus 20 DP stride on enemies. This debuff does not stack with Petal Drill's DP Shred though, and will replace it instead since it has a higher value. The skill has a long 20-second cooldown, so use it wisely. Moonlight Dash is the first flow skill that you will learn in Awakening, and it hits like a truck. It is triggered by holding LMB after Petal Bloom, Cloud Stab, Frost Flower, or through the quick slot. This skill has super armor and can also down smash enemies. It has a cooldown of 9 seconds. Level 58 unlocks 2 new skills. One of them is Cloud Stab. Cloud Stab deals significant damage, has a float, and gives a large amount of HP when hitting an enemy. It can be triggered by holding LMB either after Moonrise or after Stigma. In PvP, this skill is one of your hardest hitting skills, especially when you use its 25% Black Spirit's Rage variant. It is also mainly used as a follow-up CC to extend combos. The skill is also a great source of sustain, as it can literally put you back near full health in an instant. It has a long cooldown of 16 seconds, so use it wisely. Tip of an Iceberg is one of your main sources of protected damage. It has a frontal guard and also gives a moderate amount of HP when hitting an enemy. It is casted by holding F after Frost Pillar. The skill is mostly used as a finisher to your combos or as a way to damage your enemies while staying behind a frontal guard. Making full use of this skill allows you to win trades you normally wouldn't win. It has a cooldown of 13 seconds. Reaching level 59 also unlocks 2 new skills. The first one is Flow Frost Flower. Frost Flower is Maehwa's newest addition to her skill set. It deals a decent amount of damage and gives a plus 10 AP buff upon use. The skill has 2 hits and is casted by holding down SE while in Awakening. The skill is best used in the beginning of combos to make use of the plus 10 AP buff, and can also be used to down smash enemies. Since it has a decent accuracy rate, its damage output isn't too shabby either, but is completely unprotected, so be careful when using it in large scale fights. The skill has a pretty low cooldown of only 5 seconds. December is the flow to Petal Drill. It deals low damage, recovers WP, and has super armor. It can be casted by holding down LMB after Petal Drill. December is mainly used to extend the super armor of Petal Drill, and is best used in large scale fights. It is rarely used in 1v1s though, as you have way better options, but it's decent in PvE as it provides a protected entry to New Year's Eve. The skill shares a cooldown with Petal Drill, which is 7 seconds. At level 60, you gain access to your Elvia Realm exclusive skill. To be able to use this skill, you first need to pick up an Elvia Awakening weapon, then put this skill into your quick slot. Silent Bleed's Light deals massive damage and also applies a minus 20 AP and DP debuff to enemies for 10 seconds. No, the skill cannot be used on normal servers, at least for now.
What was it you needed me to do for you exactly?
At level 60, you can now also unlock your core skill. You can upgrade either Tenacious Edge, Petal Drill, Sticky Snowflake, Frost Pillars, Moonrise, or Petal Bloom. I will be going into detail later which one I recommend taking. Once you unlock specific Awakening skills, you will have an option to use their Black Spirit's Rage or BSR versions. These skills are Sticky Snowflake, Cloud Stab, Moonrise, Petal Bloom, and Petal Drill. At 10% BSR, you can use Sticky Snowflake's variant. This can be triggered by holding down RMB right after casting the skill. It does give Sticky Snowflake a little damage boost, but the best use for this skill in my opinion is for knocking down people on horses. This skill works wonders if used for that purpose. At 25% BSR, you can use Cloud Stab's variant, which is triggered by holding down S while casting the skill. This will probably be your most used BSR skill, as it makes Cloud Stab do a ton of damage and turns the heal from decent to amazing. I don't recommend spamming this though, since this consumes 1/4 of your BSR and that's a lot. In PvE, this pretty much just acts as your emergency heal if you desperately need health. At 50% BSR, you can use Moonrise's variant, which is triggered by holding down RMB while casting the skill. This adds a decent amount of additional damage to Moonrise and you can use it if you want. I personally don't recommend it because 50% BSR is a lot and there are other better uses for it.
I forgot to sign it.
At 100% BSR, you can use Petal Bloom's BSR variant, and is automatically triggered once you cast the skill with 100% rage. Probably the only place where you'll be using this is in large scale fights, since with high gear, this skill can actually nuke a lot of people. It can also act as a wide area stun and can be a good initiator for your team. You can get grabbed out of it though, so be careful. In PvE, I don't really recommend using this, as investing your rage for your Z buff is a better option. At 200% BSR, you can use Petal Drill's BSR variant, and this automatically triggered once you cast Petal Drill with 100% rage. As for this skill, well, just don't. Just give your rage to a wizard or a Zerker or something. This skill is slow, is not worth the damage, and you're just probably gonna get grabbed out of it.
Really be awkward this early?
Reaching level 56, 57, and 58 allows you to unlock skills that which you can use. These skills can be found in the Skill Enhancement tab besides the Awakening tab, and they are known as Rabam Skills. In order to unlock these skills, you need to have their prerequisite Awakening skills first, which usually requires you to upgrade them to a certain level. Each of these skills have their own uses and purposes, so I'm gonna go over each of them, what they do, and what I use. At level 56, you can unlock either Ultimate Maehwa's Will or Ultimate Crimson Gust. Ultimate Maehwa's Will can be taken by combining Maehwa's Will at level 3 and Blind Thrust at level 3. When casted, this skill gives 450 HP, a plus 15 magic DP buff, and a 30% crit rate buff. This skill also pulls in mobs towards you when used. Ultimate Crimson Gust on the other hand can be taken by combining Maehwa's Will at level 3 and Red Moon at level 3. When casted, this skill also gives you 450 HP when used and a plus 15 magic DP buff. It doesn't give you a 30% crit rate buff and also doesn't pull in mobs. Instead, this skill deals respectable damage to an area in front of you and floats enemies. You do not need to hit anything for the heal to apply. Use Ultimate Maehwa's Will if you want the heal and the buffs and nothing else. If you want additional damage and an additional float, then use Crimson Gust. I personally use Ultimate Maehwa's Will, but it's up to you. At level 57, you can unlock either Blooming Stride or Blooming Step. Blooming Stride can be taken by combining Blooming at level 1 and Backstep Slash at level 3. When used, your character will perform a slash forward that deals damage and gives a minus 50 movement speed debuff to enemies. This skill also has Frontal Guard. Blooming Step on the other hand can be taken by combining Blooming at level 1 and Dragon Bite at level 3. When used, your character will perform a slash forwards that deals damage, gives a plus 10 DP buff to yourself, and gives a minus 20 DP debuff to enemies. This skill also has Frontal Guard. Blooming Step dashes forward by a longer distance than Blooming Stride but also deals less damage overall. Use Blooming Stride if you want a skill that gives a huge movement speed slow to enemies, or use Blooming Step if you want a skill that can give a DP self buff and a DP enemy debuff. I personally use Blooming Step, but again, it's up to you. At level 58, you can unlock either Decapitating Cyclone or Decapitating Dragon. Decapitating Cyclone can be unlocked by combining Decapitation at level 5 and Cyclone Slash at level 2. When used, your character will perform a slash that has a Frontal Guard, then does a second slash which throws a tornado with decent range that can float enemies. This skill deals a decent amount of damage but doesn't give any buffs. Decapitating Dragon on the other hand can be unlocked by combining Decapitation at level 5 and Ultimate Dragon Claw. This skill performs a slash that can stun enemies, then does a second slash. This skill is unprotected but gives a plus 15% attack speed buff for 10 seconds, which is quite a lot. If you want a semi-protected long-range float, then pick Decapitating Cyclone. But if you want a stun with a plus 15% attack speed buff, then pick Decapitating Dragon. I personally use Decapitating Cyclone, but it's up to you. Once you reach level 60, you can now unlock your core skills. Awakening has a total of 6 possible core skills that you can take. Tenacious Edge, which gets a Frontal Guard, Petal Drill, which gets a Bound, Sticky Snowflake, which gets Super Armor, Frost Pillars, which gets a Knockdown, Moonrise, which gets a Stun on the first hit, and Petal Bloom, which gets a Knockdown. Petal Drill and Petal Bloom are the two most viable options. Petal Bloom is really good at both small scale and large scale PvP, while Petal Drill is amazing at 1v1s. You can pick any of the two. I personally go with Petal Drill, but I do think Petal Bloom is a really solid option as well. Now let's talk about skill add-ons. Here are my current ones. It's a hybrid PvE and PvP setup, which isn't the best, but it works for me. It's not really that strict nowadays because of the add-on revamp, so you don't have to follow mine exactly. Just make sure that you put your buffs on skills that you use a lot. Low cooldown or spammable skills like Blind Thrust and New Year's Eve are good skills to put buffs on. Skills that you normally use at the start of combos are also great skills to put add-ons on. Red Moon and Sticky Snowflake are good candidates. As for debuffs, put them on skills that are easy to land on enemies or are great for poking. Petal Gel and Stigma work great for this. PvE on Maehwa Awakening is actually pretty chill. On low end spots, you pretty much just abuse your mobility. You have a lot of low cooldown and spammable skills, so you can just go from pack to pack without running out of options. Don't overdo it though, as you will run out of stamina. On most mid to high end spots, it's pretty much just buffing yourself up, then spamming New Year's Eve. However, there are some grinding spots that will CC you like there's no tomorrow, so you will still need to throw in some protected skills here and there. Here are some of the PvE skill rotations that I use. My PvE skill rotation consists of two parts. First is pre-buffing, then the actual DPS phase. This rotation contains a lot of buffs that can all vary depending on your skill add-ons. It also makes use of Blooming Step, which has a minus 20 DP debuff on enemies. This rotation is pretty overkill, and you don't have to cast all of it as some spots doesn't even require that many buffs. Here's also an alternative version that makes use of oppression instead. I personally alternate between these two, but it's up to you how you want to use them. Now that you've gotten your buffs, you're gonna actually deal damage now. I'll give a few different combos and explain when and why I recommend to use them. The general rule of Awakening right now is that the more you spam New Year's Eve, the more damage you will do. The best way to do this is by holding down Tenacious Edge using SLMB and casting New Year's Eve by holding down space. Holding down these three buttons allow you to do the New Year's Eve spam. This combo focuses on the New Year's Eve spam and ensures that New Year's Eve gets the full duration of reverse skills attack speed buff. After pre-buffing, you cast Stigma into half Frost Flower, then the New Year's Eve spam. This combo is probably the strongest compared to the others, but is also the most unprotected option, so only use this if you're certain that you won't get CC'd by mobs. This combo is a perfect mix of protection and damage by incorporating a few protected skills at the start of the combo. After pre-buffing, you cast Petal Drill, Moonrise, Frost Pillars, and the tip of an iceberg. You then cast Petal Bloom into Moonlight Dash into the New Year's Eve spam. This combo deals slightly less damage than the first combo but gives you more protection. This combo is a modified version of Combo 2. It offers a little more burst damage, but it also sacrifices the protection that Combo 2 gives. After pre-buffing, you cast half Frost Flower, Moonrise, Frost Pillars into the New Year's Eve spam. You then finish it off by using Petal Bloom into Moonlight Dash. This is my go-to combo on spots like Hystria, Miramox, and Kratuga. Combo 4 has a large AoE with comparable damage to Combo 3. After pre-buffing, you cast Sticky Snowflake, Half Frost Flower, Sticky Snowflake, Moonrise, into Frost Pillars, into the New Year's Eve spam. You then finish off with Petal Bloom and Moonlight Dash. This combo is very unprotected, so it is best used on spots where mobs can be knocked down or when they're scattered all over the place. I use this on spots like Ackman, Star's End, and most Elvious spots. This combo is pretty much the OG Maehwa combo back then. After buffing, you cast Sticky Snowflake, Moonrise, Frost Pillars, Tip of the Iceberg, Petal Bloom into Moonlight Dash, Red Moon, Sea Swap into Petal Drill in the New Year's Eve spam. This still does pretty decent damage as I added the New Year's Eve spam in the end, and is slightly protected so you can use it if you want. This combo I pretty much only use when I really can't afford to be CC'd by mobs. This provides almost full protection but deals the least amount of damage out of the other options, so I don't really recommend using it. After buffing, you cast Petal Drill into December, Moonrise, Frost Pillars, Tip of an Iceberg, Petal Bloom, Moonlight Dash, Red Moon into Sea Swap, Petal Drill, December, Sea Swap, Backstab Slash, Dragon Bite, and finish off with Decapitating Cyclone. You can go ahead and modify these combos for yourself depending on which spots you want to use them on and what gear you currently have. Maehwa PvP is pretty much all about reacting to your opponent and trying to fish a CC on them while avoiding getting CC'd yourself. In Node Wars, she is best suited on the flex team, but she could be part of the main team if you have the gear, though I don't recommend it. I'm gonna go ahead and say this now. I cannot teach you how to be good at PvP. There isn't a secret formula to that, and I don't even consider myself a good player. Your playstyle will naturally come as you play, so just be patient and enjoy the game. What I can teach you though are the basics, what our catches are, how to catch someone, how to combo, and how I deal with certain situations. Maehwa has a shit ton of catches. This is distributed in both our Awakening and our Pre-Awakening, so make sure you constantly swap between them. Let me start with our most reliable and most used skills for catching. Starting off with our stiffness options. First is Dragon Bite or SLMB in Pre-Awakening. This skill has a really low cooldown and has frontal guard, which makes this skill one of your most reliable skills for catching. Don't trust the frontal guard too much though since it doesn't last very long. It's better off to just chase out of it instantly to avoid getting caught from behind. Another stiff option is Forward Blind Thrust, which is cast by holding down WLMB and space at the same time. This skill is very difficult to pull off at first because of the keybind. Even now I mess up a lot when using this skill. A trick I found is to hold down LMB and W first, and then press space. This skill is even faster than Dragon Bite and has a longer dash. It's unprotected though, so make sure you find the right timing to use this. You can actually bypass frontal guard using Blind Thrust by dashing to the left or to the right past your opponent. You're then gonna turn your camera really fast behind you to redirect the hit of the skill. This trick is somewhat advanced though, which needs a lot of practice to pull off consistently. Your third and arguably easiest stiff option is Stub Arrow or Shift Right Click. Stub Arrow is a ranged CC and is a really good skill to catch your opponent off guard with, especially if you use it after chasing backwards first, which cancels most of the animation of the skill, pretty much making it instacast. Despite being spammable, don't spam this skill because you're gonna lose the stiffness when you use it during cooldown. Stigma and Oppression from Awakening are really good options as well. Both are really fast and should be used when you can. Now for the floats. First is Red Moon, which is a really strong skill. Red Moon has a frontal guard and a ridiculous hitbox. The skill lasts a while too, which is why it is so strong because enemies will get floated if they get caught anytime during this animation. In higher level PvP though, avoid spamming this as most players will just go behind you and catch you. You're very prone to grabs while in this animation, which is why it's very recommended to cancel out of it immediately using sleep steps. The good thing about this skill is that it can be used while in Awakening, which automatically puts you in pre-Awakening afterwards. Doing so will still cast the C-swap cooldown though, so you can't go back to Awakening for a little bit. To bypass this, you should use Red Moon from the quick slot instead. Doing so will bypass the C-swap cooldown, which allows you to go back to Awakening much quicker using Sleet Steps. Another decent float option is Carver. This skill is actually pretty fast and unexpected. Although it does leave you quite open, it can still be effective and is a good catching tool if you find the right timing. For our stuns, the reverse skill from Awakening is pretty much the best option. It has a frontal guard, has a low cooldown, and is pretty quick so it can be thrown in pretty safely. Those skills are the ones that you will mainly be using when you're catching people. Besides those ones though, you also have other options. Core Petal Drill and Core Petal Bloom have a bound and a knockdown respectively. Both are really good options. BSR Petal Bloom, Decapitation, Decapitating Dragon, and Core Moonrise also have stuns but have very niche uses. It's up to you if you want to use them when they are available to you, although like the other ones here, they aren't as reliable as your main catches. Cyclone Slash and Decapitating Cyclone both have a float. These can be good float options too and are great openers, but they can get quite risky, especially in large scale PvP. Blooming also has a stun, but it's unprotected and its animation is ridiculously long, so it leaves you quite open to CC. Unlearning Blooming Phantom will make its animation a lot shorter, but this is more of a personal choice if you want to trade in a shorter animation in exchange for the damage. I personally don't do this because I use Blooming a lot in my combos, and I need Blooming Phantom for that. Lastly, you also have a knockback from Stub Arrow Evasion. The skill itself actually has a short iframe, so it's actually pretty decent to use from time to time. I wouldn't rely on this skill too much, but you can do some pretty clutch dodges using this. Note that all of these catches are best used in between your movement and your protected skills. Don't just blindly throw these as you will just get yourself killed. Learn to be patient when catching as a Maehwa because most players will bait you into using these catches, usually by spamming protection or by acting cautious then try to catch you themselves. It's your job to read your opponent's patterns and find the right way of catching your opponent and when to use these skills. There are some people though that are seemingly impossible to catch no matter what you do. When you're faced with these types of players, stop trying to catch them for a second and check your other options first. Either reposition yourself and force your opponent to move. This option heavily depends on the class you are dealing with. Some classes have a gap on their movement skills and this option hopes to take advantage of that. This is not recommended though if your enemy has high AP and has ranged abilities because they're just gonna poke you down while you're busy moving around. Your second option is to throw in debuffs and slows to your opponent. Maehwa has a lot of these that can all be applied pretty safely. Sadly, we cannot stack slows the same way as before because of the nerfs to slow stacking, but Maehwa can still apply up to a 50% slow pretty easily. Yes, slowing your enemy does mean that you will be extending their protection, however you will be prolonging their gaps as well, which you hopefully should see and take advantage of. Your third option is to try to trade damage instead. This option is heavily reliant on how hard you hit against your opponent according to your gear. While this one is the most practical option, it's also the most aggressive and predictable one. So, what's the best option? Well, all of them. A mix of all of these three things are what I recommend that you should do because some of these alone can't exactly solve any and all situations. You should learn to plan your approach depending on the current matchup, taking into account things such as the class, gear, and skill level of your opponent. Of course, these are just my recommendations. Other methods and solutions will be available to you once you start to solidify your own playstyle. Now that you know how to catch people, the next part is learning combos. Learning how to combo heavily relies on learning the CC mechanics of this game and mastering the skills of your class. I'll be showing you a few sample combos that you can use as a basis to make your own combos, or you can just use them as it is. Let's begin. Combo 1 uses Blind Thrust as a catch, followed by Blind Slash as a follow-up CC. I then swap to Awakening and cast Sticky Snowflake, Half Frost Flower, Moonrise, Frost Pillars, then Tip of an Iceberg. This combo uses Dragon Bite as a catch, followed by Roundhouse Kick as a follow-up CC. I then cast Backstep Slash into C-Swap, into Sticky Snowflake, Moonrise, then Cloud Stab. I then finish off with Petal Bloom into Moonlight Dash. This combo uses Stub Arrow as a catch, followed by Roundhouse Kick as a follow-up CC. I then swap to my Awakening, then cast Sticky Snowflake, Half Frost Flower, Moonrise, then Cloud Stab. I then finish off with Petal Bloom into Moonlight Dash. Combo 4 uses Dragon Bite as a catch, followed by Red Moon as a follow-up CC. I then swap to Awakening using Sleet Steps, then cast Sticky Snowflake, Moonrise, Cloud Stab, Half Frost Flower, Moonrise, Frost Pillars, then Tip of an Iceberg. This combo uses Oppression as a catch, followed by Red Moon as a follow-up CC. I then swap to Awakening using Sleet Steps, then cast Full Frost Flower, Moonrise, C-Swap, Backstep Slash, Forward Chase into Blooming. This combo uses Oppression as a catch, followed by Sleet Steps into Forward Auto Attack as a follow-up CC. I then cast Petal Drill into Moonrise, Cloud Stab, Petal Bloom, and finish off with Moonlight Dash. This combo uses Dragon Bite as a catch, followed by C-Swap into Forward Auto Attack as a follow-up CC. I then cast Full Frost Flower, Moonrise, Cloud Stab, into Sticky Snowflake, Moonrise, C-Swap, then Backstab Slash. This combo uses Stigma as a catch, followed by Forward Auto Attack as a follow-up CC. I then cast Sticky Snowflake, Half Frost Flower, Sticky Snowflake, Red Moon, Sleet Steps into Petal Bloom into Moonlight Dash. This combo uses the core of either Petal Gel or Petal Bloom as a catch, followed by full Frost Flower into Decapitating Cyclone as a follow-up CC. I then use Sleet Steps, Sticky Snowflake, Moonrise, Frost Pillars, and the tip of an iceberg. Again, those are just sample combos. Go ahead and learn how they work and make them your own. These combos will vary from player to player as gear, level, and other factors come into play, whether you can actually kill people or not. Naturally, the higher your gear, the less of a need for full combos, so adjust accordingly. And that's pretty much it, guys. This turned out to be a ridiculously long video, but I hope I managed to help a few people from this. This video took me a lot of effort to make, so I would be really grateful if you guys give me feedback or just leave a like if you enjoyed it. I definitely missed something or made a mistake, so please just leave it in the comments so other people can see. You guys should also check out the Maehwa Discord. There are a lot of helpful guides and helpful people there, so if you guys want to learn more, I recommend going there. That's all from me. Stay safe everyone, and thank you for watching.